you down with OTC? Are you down with OTC? OTC. Are you down with OTC? Are you down with OTC? OTC. Are you down with OTC? Down with OTC.
Hey, welcome. Whoa, that went quick, unexpected. I didn't plan on stopping that right away, but anyhow, welcome to On the Chain. This is Jeff. You're here on the HODL Review exclusively Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today, we are going to be talking about, you got it. We are going to get into regulatory clarity. We want to break down regulatory clarity. We want to look at this Ripple XRP situation, or let's call it the SEC versus Ripple situation, SEC versus XRP situation, the SEC versus pretty much the entire cryptocurrency space situation. We're going to dig into that. I want to get into the, we're going to go over the Token Taxonomy Act. We want to go through the title, dissect it a little bit. We want to look at the Token Taxonomy Act in 3 phases because this is the 3rd introduction of the Token Taxonomy Act. It's coming in 3 sessions of Congress. And we're also going to look at the Securities Exchange Act of 1933 and 1934. We're going to make it fun. We're going to make it interesting. And we're going to do all that and more. When's it going to be? Right now. All right, there we go. I lost my cursor for a second. Said, hey, how are we going to get through this? I lost my cursor. Hey, why don't you guys, as you're coming into the room, shout out where you guys are tuning in from. It's early morning. It could be afternoon. It could already be evening, depending on where you are. The key is that you've got a good cup of espresso. But if it's evening where you are, you might be drinking something a little bit stronger. So welcome. You got Jacob has already got his coffee ready. Whoa, this is strong today. Holy cow. Christopher coming to us from Cork, Ireland. Welcome. So you guys have probably heard it. You've looked at it. You know, we've talked about it on this show, you know, multiple times. We've dug into the Token Taxonomy Act. Now, the Token Taxonomy Act is extremely relevant as it comes to what's going to happen, what is happening in the US. So when it comes to regulatory clarity, we need to really identify, is it the SEC that should be bringing about regulatory clarity, or is it Congress that should be bringing about regulatory clarity? And in fact, it is Congress that's supposed to be bringing about the regulatory clarity. The SEC can work within the confines of what the acts allow them to do. Now, imagine we're allowing the SEC to make decisions around a technology, around investment vehicles that don't really have a clear definition anywhere. So the SEC can apply old law. The SEC can attempt to take cryptocurrency, blockchain tech, digital assets, and mirror them, you know, with the laws, the regulation, and everything that's on the books right now as it comes to actual stock securities, bonds, etc. And obviously, you know, fiat and everything else. Now, the problem with that is that this is a brand new technology that doesn't really fit so neatly into the box of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 or the Securities Act of 1933. So imagine that the SEC is currently operating around laws that were enacted, 87, 88 years ago. So we're operating, you know, based on a premise from 88 years ago. Now, if you're trying to operate on a premise from 88 years ago, we're talking about a period of time where there was no television, there was obviously no computer, there was obviously no blockchain technology, and the stock market itself was still relatively limited in terms of its, you know, overall, you know, reach, and in terms of things that were happening within it. And we're looking at acts. So 1933 was very reactionary to what took place in 1929. Now, if we look at that, I've got my other screen over here. You guys can't see it, but you will soon. But you've got the stock market crash from 1929. So there's a major meltdown in the stock market. Congress jumps to, they say, you know what, we got to figure this out. We can't allow this to happen again. So they start working on, hey, how can we do this? How do we protect the investors from getting crushed, getting decimated as they're investing in the stock market? It's not going to work. So they come up with the Securities Act of 1933, which is then followed a year later by the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, hence the regulatory body of the SEC as well. So now, as we put all of this together, imagine that we're trying to take our cryptocurrency, our blockchain tech, and fit it in. It's a round thing, and they're trying to fit it into the square, into this box that is that are laws that were put in place 88 years ago. So now, obviously, we have, you know, some major issue here, and that's what we want to get into. So let me see. I've got some good comment coming in here. So we got like Moto Yoda. Pretty sure Jeff is too human to be on the SEC board. You need to be at least 40% reptilian, or at least 50% enforcer. So if you got the enforcement attitude, then the SEC is actually perfect, you know, for you. So, all right. So this is awesome. So yeah, man, I'm glad you brought this up, because I was going to bring this up earlier or as well. But William brings up Bitcoin hits $60,000. So imagine how amazing this is to really have a determination as far as the direction that this space is going. And why is this all relevant? How does this fit into the Token Taxonomy Act? how does this fit into this new narrative of what's advancing in this space? I'm looking at it right now. Bitcoin at $60,000. It's definitely passed an all-time new hurdle here. Let's pull this up. Here we go. So let me go over to this screen. Let's zoom in a little bit. There you go. Check that out. Bitcoin, 60,095. It's up 22% for the past 7 days, up 7% in the last 24 hours, followed again. So we saw some pullback in the crypto space. We had Ethereum that was pulling back all the way down to like 1,400. Bitcoin pulled all the way back down to like 48,000. Now we've got Ethereum up there over 1,800. Bitcoin up there. Binance is still playing around with this $300 idea. Obviously, it's not there yet. Tether, there's some new news on Tether. DOT has been pulling back a little bit. There was an interesting article I read about that. Cardano still making some highs over here at $1.14, and XRP, our favorite stable coin, sitting at 45 cents. So there you go, 45 cents on the XRP. Uniswap making some big moves. All of them, and the whole market again is starting to trend upwards. Let's see our favorite Doge at 0.5 basically. So, but this is the big story. This is the big news right here, because this is what the space is going after. This is why you see the SEC and you see, Congress and others that are getting very kind of aggressive, so to speak, in coming after those that are investing in the digital asset space. Now, one of the things that were brought up by this administration through the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, is that she wants to tax unrealized gains. Now, the Token Taxonomy Act addresses it from a completely different perspective, because within the digital asset space, they want to make sure that you can move your digital assets without having to pay taxes, even if there's a realized gain, because you're moving from asset to asset. And we're going to go through that here in a minute. But if you have the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, proposing new tax regulation that will penalize you when your asset, whatever it might be, goes up in value, and you have to pay tax on it regardless of whether you sell or don't sell, an unrealized gain is going to penalize anybody in the U.S. economy significantly, and it potentially could crush any type of new technology, any type of new economy, any type of new investment vehicle that's coming up. So we want to get into that. I want to give a quick shout out to William. What is up, William? Thank you for the huge support. Appreciate you. So here's a follow-up here. Bitcoin is becoming a new religion. People are already calling themselves Bitcoin evangelists, the worship of the Bitcoin. That's kind of like the worship of the US dollar, all that other good stuff. I mean, it really is amazing. It truly is. You've got the maxis over there. Now you can't exist, within a maxi type of environment. The whole space is developing and designed to develop in tandem with one another. We got to get everything kind of working together, everything building, everything growing towards a specific direction. So let's see here. So there's just so much going on. Hang on a minute. Hey, look at Ronnie Size. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Today is a good day. All right, let's see. Right Coast Crypto, Jeff and Chip, good morning. From Jersey, just used my 1,400 to buy more XRP and uphold. Let's go. There you go. So investing. It's so important. We're seeing this space develop. We're seeing this space grow. We want to make sure that it stays there. We want to make sure that we don't have any major pullback. All right, let me go over here. Let me zoom in. Before we get into talking about the Token Taxonomy Act and its different revisions, I thought that this was important. This came from Stuart Alderati, the general counsel for Ripple, and I thought it was really a very poignant sentiment and statement that he put up here. Now, this is a read by Rosalind Layton, PhD, evidence-based tech policy. She's at the University of Copenhagen, and really, really, important. Some of the ideas that she had in there, and I believe we had covered this before. But look at Stuart. Not only is the future of the U.S. crypto industry at stake, but the arrogance of the unrestrained regulators making policy through enforcement is on trial as well. This was a statement from Rosalind Layton, but I think Stuart Alderati picked it out precisely. This is so important because, again, we're looking at what is the industry in the U.S. We have a brand new industry that's taking root all over the world. And in the U.S., the SEC for the past years and the U.S. Congress are bumping into themselves and tripping over their untied shoelaces, while governments in other countries, India included, because India keeps butting heads with themselves, trying to figure out the digital asset cryptocurrency space, and yet they're having conversation about it and making potential progress, although we see some pullback. In the U.S., the one area where we've talked about this, but has been a leader, kind of a beacon, onto the rest of the world when it comes to development and innovation of technology. And now the U.S. is doing the exact opposite, both from a financial perspective and from a technology perspective, where there were 8 years in this country where the agenda was to rule from behind, not rule from the front, but rule from the back, and try to help direct things, which doesn't work so well. And they're trying to do that again. However, they're taking a back seat to this critical development as the economies of the world, the financial structure of the world begins to change. The U.S. is almost nowhere to be seen because they're tied up in political turmoil and conflict over who knows what. And so obviously we know what. But Stuart Alderati here says not only, and this is the statement again from Rosalind, and we have to repeat this so many times, but not only is the future of U.S. cryptocurrency industry at stake, which 100% it is, because if we're not leading or we're not part of the leadership, so I'm not saying that the U.S. has to be the number one in front of all of it, but the U.S. has to be in that small group of countries that are leading, has to be there as the structures are put into place. And then, as you start, moving forward. And if they're not there, then that means that the U.S. is taking a back seat. And if the U.S. is taking a back seat, that means that the industry in the U.S. and our role in the financial gains are also taking a back seat. And that means that others are going to advance significantly. Maybe this is part of the plan. Maybe it's part of the structure of our current political climate in the U.S., which is to allow everybody else. So, when you think about, from a political ideology perspective, there are those that believe that you need to reach down and try to pull people up, and you provide them with the tools to continue. So you can help stand somebody up and say, hey, I'm gonna pull you up with me, and I'm gonna give you this opportunity to stand up. But now the rest of the opportunity is yours. You got to take it and run with it. In the U.S., for the most part, the business climate, anybody can come to the U.S., start a business, and look for a mechanism in order to gain their riches in the U.S. There's obstacles that everybody faces, some more than others, but it's overcoming those obstacles that puts people on a trajectory to success. That is what the United States has always been about. It isn't about the way things are being dictated at this point, and you sense it because you see it in other parts of the world, where the idea isn't to bring people up, but it's to grab people from the top and bring them down, so that there's a meeting in the middle between those at the bottom and those at the top. You bring it and you balance it out. So if you look at like Venezuela as a perfect example, why is all this so critical to crypto? Because it's important that we understand, what is happening in the United States structure as things are getting ready to take a back seat, and we can't allow that to happen. So if you look at, Venezuela is a prime example, which was a major exporter of product, of precious metals, of oil, of agriculture, they had a huge meat industry over there, self-sufficient, and the objective within that country what created ultimate turmoil, because instead of bringing the people and helping them and saying, hey, I want to give opportunity and allow people at the top, to make money, allow other people to join, the ranks, they pulled the people at the top down and gave handouts to the people at the bottom, and they upset the balance. It creates chaos. And so now, if we look at the way the administration, or just from overall just the political climate, fits into Stewart's narrative here, forget about where he's coming from politically or Ripple. It doesn't matter. What matters is this statement and the meaning of it, because not only is the future of the U.S. crypto industry at stake, which it is, but the arrogance of the unrestrained regulators making policy through enforcement. So that is even more impactful. This is the statement from Rosalind Layton. Again, this is what he pulls out. And it's so important to focus in on this, because think about the SEC again, operating without guidance. They're operating without a framework to understand the nature and the dynamics of this new financial asset class, which is cryptocurrency, which is the blockchain technology. They're operating on a framework, on laws that were put in place 88 years ago. We're talking about the Howey test, which was put in place in 1946 to judge whether or not an investment is an investment contract, or is it a security? What is it? Is based on an orange grove, and you can break it down and simplify it to a simple case. And obviously, there's a lot of other cases that that then spring off of that. But if you're allowing these regulators, the SEC, to operate untethered and basically make up their own decisions, then you're in a very, very difficult, bad spot. We can't allow the SEC to provide regulatory clarity, because again, they're not operating under agreed on law. They're operating under old law, making up their own mind on things. So is it right to allow Gensler or Clayton or any of these other people within the SEC to make those decisions? Or should they be ruling on the cases in front of them that are brought in front of the SEC and making decisions based on the merits of the laws that are on the books that are applicable to blockchain technology and cryptocurrency? I mean, it just makes sense. So, so here, there was some statements here that I thought were really valid. The SEC, here's one from Ken. He's on Twitter. You guys can't see it. I can see it. The SEC is just another regulatory rigged entity created solely to control the people and stack the deck in favor of aristocrats, pure and simple. And so is it a regulatory body to do that? If we look back over the years, is that what they have done? Have they put laws in place that restrict everyday ordinary people in the United States from investing wherever they want to invest? Do certain groups of people have an upper hand when it comes to investing and gaining big returns on their money? The answer is 100% yes. That is 100% the case. If you want to invest, early IPOs, you have to be an accredited investor. You can't just invest. You have to have a net worth of a minimum of $1 million before you can become an accredited investor. Now, once you get to that point, it opens up your doors to investing. Now, the SEC, their claim is that they're protecting the individual from losing their money. Now, here's my question. If I go out and start a brand new business and I take every last dollar that I have in savings and I put that into my brand new business, am I not risking every last dollar that I had in savings, on that new entity? Is the business going to succeed? Is the business going to fail? Now, is the SEC or any other regulatory body in the US then going to come to me and knock on my door and say, hey, by the way, Jeff, I think it's a really bad idea that you took all your money out of savings and you started this brand new business. I believe, in order for you to do that, you need to have specific licensing. You have to have a specific net worth in order for you to do anything like that. And you shouldn't be allowed to invest all your money into your new business. Although you believe you can succeed, we're just trying to protect you. So we're not going to allow you to do that. Could you imagine? I mean, this is basically what the SEC and other, entities within are saying to, everyday people, that you are not allowed to invest and gain the bigger gains by taking and putting into high risk investments. So that is supposedly the objective of the SEC, which is then to protect the individual. But instead, exactly, dude, dude, what is up, dude? It sounds like communism. That's exactly what it sounds like. It's exactly what it sounds like. Now, you should be able to create any business that you want, and you should be able to invest in any vehicle that you want. Now, obviously, there has to be rules to the game, but why are you going to, in your rules, restrict certain individuals? How are you going to restrict certain individuals from investing while you allow other individuals to invest? How does that make sense? Now, again, rules to the game. You have the Securities Act of 1933. You have the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. They create the Howey test. They have the idea of securities. I get it. We need to operate. We're a society of laws. We're not a society based on anarchy. However, we are, building towards an overall, let's just, call it societal norm. So you have to operate within that. Now, if the deck is being stacked, like Ken was saying, that it's being stacked in favor of aristocrats, what about being stacked in favor of the congressional representatives that you then put in office that are there untethered to invest in whatever they want to invest in without the repercussion of insider trading? And they do it every single day, and they make a shit ton of money doing it that way. So go figure. So that is, one part of it. The other part, again, is that they're restricting these investment vehicles to only certain people. They want to call it the aristocrats, whatever you want to call it. It isn't fair. It's an unfair, system right from the get-go, and we're seeing it unfold even in the case with GameStop and what was going on Reddit. You're starting to see the inner workings, the inner turmoil of how the SEC functions by stepping on by stepping on certain individuals, to boost other individuals. And it's a very, kind of, bad, position to be in. Obviously, bad precedent. Now, the digital asset space opens up this opportunity basically to everybody. And now what is the SEC coming and doing again? They're looking at these cases, and they're going to look at Ripple, and they're looking at XRP. And this is just the beginning, of what their objectives are, because they're lost. They don't know exactly what they're doing or how they're doing it. And why? Because the SEC themselves do not understand the technology that they're discussing. So even the enforcement mom, that used to be the crypto mom, she's going along to get along as a commissioner, sitting on the SEC, not being extremely outspoken to say, hey, let's put out a statement. Let's do the Blockchain Association could have put out a statement on this, but everybody's kind of dancing around the narrative. And this is exactly what's happening. So for, Stuart Alderati to pull out what Rosalind Layton was saying, it's really, right on point, 100% on point. Now, as we dig through, I'm going to pull this up, and I want to go through a couple of things here that I think are going to be really key. Let me get rid of the Stuart Alderati thing. Let me pull this up. Let's take a little breather, take a little break for a second. But here, Jamaica to pilot CBDC later this year. Now we can look at this and say, hey, this is pretty outstanding. We see a lot of countries that are piloting CBDCs, their central bank digital currencies, a lot of stuff going on. Then you get into, we read this, they're launching their CBDC in 2022. So next year, while giving the annual national budget debate address before the national legislature on March 9th, Jamaica's Minister of Finance, Nigel Clark, announced the CBDC will be piloted in December ahead of the launch. So December 2021. This is amazing because there's so much discussion on this right now that the digital asset space is growing up mainly as being vital. Look, these guys, everybody's acknowledging this. Digital society, vital to economic recovery following this issue that we've had. Now, it seems very orchestrated and very planned. It might not be. I don't want to jump into conspiracy theory. However, all of this seems very orchestrated. Had you told me a year ago that all this would happen and the whole world would jump in this soon, I would say you're crazy. But now, as they've destroyed and decimated the economies of the world, and we see the stranglehold that states like New York and California have put on their people, decimating businesses, decimating the economies, and giving little sprinkles of handouts. I mean, it's amazing. So the digital asset space has grown over the past year. Bitcoin has grown to $60,000. Why has Bitcoin grown? Why is the digital asset space growing by leaps and bounds right now due to what's happening? It's because people see the writing that's on the wall as it comes to the ultimate control that the government bodies, these regulatory authorities, have been unleashing, on the people. And that is via these new vehicles called CBDCs. Now, if you look at this, I'm not saying that this is 100%. It seems too Orwellian. However, it's just one more element, because now every country, when they talk about CBDCs, they talk about this exact scene. Just like the government in Jamaica, they view the accelerated transition to a digital society and economy as vital to the recovery. But that's the same theme everywhere in the world. It's the exact same theme. So here, it is therefore the policy of this government, Madam Speaker, to introduce a central bank digital currency. So, but then they had to be very, very crystal clear that a CBDC is issued and backed by the Central Bank of Jamaica. It's not a cryptocurrency. See? It is not to be confused with cryptocurrency, which is privately issued and not backed by a regulatory authority, not backed by a centralized regulatory authority, is what he should be saying. It's basically going to be pegged to the Jamaican dollar on a one-to-one basis. It's interchangeable. So it's basically a stable coin. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily 100% a bad thing. Right, Chip? Because what we do know is that it's centralized, it's controlled, there's control mechanism that are put into place. But there's so much more to this. And, I don't want to dig in to all of it. Some of it is, some of the ideas that you can pull out of these things, like Chip is bringing up, could be very, kind of fringe, right? But if you think about it, they've dropped the hints. In Canada, the government said, you know what? Blockchain and digital currency could be very useful for making sure that people pay their taxes. Why? Because you can monitor everything. You can see what they spend. You can see when they spend it. You can see how much they've spent, what they spent it on. And then you can make sure to also monitor what their earnings are. You can monitor what their taxes spent were. If you have to collect taxes, you can do it automatically. You can do the write-offs automatically. there's good and bad. So you have the good side, which is, hey, if you can simplify your life and all of your processes can happen seamlessly within the blockchain environment, and you can cut out your CPAs and your accounting because so much is happening orchestrated automatically. I've invested, I've sold, I've bought, I've done this, I've done that, my income, my outflow, blah, 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 whatever. And now it's all being tracked because now you don't have to file your tax return. They're not going to allow you to use your write-offs or whatever it's going to be because they're just going to tax you. You know, I mean, it's really, you know, mind-boggling. You know, so, but this is like you have to start thinking like that. You know, because this is, you know, the direction. But then you look and you're like, okay, well, Jamaica seems to get it though. They said it's not a cryptocurrency, but crypto is privately issued and not backed by the regulatory authority, which we know. But when, at what point does the regulatory authority call the digital asset space currency? You know, do they do it in the US? Do they do it elsewhere? You know, and it's, you know, it's amazing. You know, so I don't even want to go into like the conspiracy thought process because you could go crazy with it. You just have to look at everything on its face and try to come up with kind of an opinion just based on what the governments are saying and what they're doing themselves. Over in China, we know that they have controlled mechanism put in place with the digital yuan as they try to control the regional influence, you know, of many of the countries in their area. So, man, I went into that tangent, but this is so important to the digital asset space. I can't, you know, it's so vital. To, you know, part of it, hey, we could be a Bitcoin maxi or an XRP maxi or whatever, but if you don't understand the growth of what's happening in the space, positive and negative, then why be in the space at all? Why invest in a space if you don't have interest or you don't understand the ebb and flow of what's going on economically and politically? The political aspect impacts the economic aspect. You know, it's crazy. It really is crazy. Now, the one thing that we know, you know, throughout all of this is that 3 times now, this is the 3rd time we've had Warren Davidson, Congressman Warren Davidson. He's introduced legislation to amend the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. Why? Because he understands the value and the significance of digital asset, of cryptocurrency. Let's see if we can expand this here a little bit. So HR 1628 is what it's called. This is the bill that Warren Davidson, Congressman Warren Davidson, introduced on March 8th. Now, it still doesn't have a specific title. It's not called the Token Taxonomy Act yet. Maybe it will be. Right now, the title is to amend the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 to exclude digital tokens from the definition of a security and to direct the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, to enact certain regulatory changes regarding digital units secured through public key cryptography. So now the SEC, through this act, are getting the direction that they need in order to do their jobs. Right now, they're untethered. The SEC can do whatever the hell they want to do when it comes to digital asset. Why? Because they're operating under laws that were put on the books 88 years ago. So this is why this element is so critical to understand. Now, people all over the world are looking at us. They say, you guys are a bunch of clowns. Japan, they understand it. England, the UK, overall, I believe that they're gaining some understanding of the initiative of what's happening. Singapore, you know, I don't know, you go all over the world, Switzerland, you go to all these countries, everyone has a little bit of a different view on how they handle it. The US, to not be a leader right now in this space is crazy. And the fact that they're tripping over themselves and bumping into each other in Congress is absurd. This is probably one of the most important legislations that has been put in front of Congress since 2016. It's the third time it was introduced. And so we're going to go through them. So we're going to go through each one of them. We're going to do it quickly. We're not going to dig into all of them, but they're all basically based on this premise that you need to amend, not change, not rewrite, not get rid of. Because what Warren Davidson is saying is that the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 34 in premise have been functioning and giving the right direction, for people to move forward. Now we can go back and disagree with that the SEC has too much power to dictate who gets to succeed and who gets to fail, as they use we're protecting the people, while they give other people opportunities to make tons of return, and yet individual investors do not. Now with the digital asset space, people have an opportunity for big gains. You can cut out the brick and mortar and all the fat in order to get those gains. However, you can't operate without the clarity. We see a case, the SEC v. Ripple and XRP, going on right now. How is the judge going to make a clear-cut decision on what they're doing without having clarity coming from Congress with something like this? How is the judge now going to make a decision on technology based on laws from 88 years ago? How did the judge make a decision on the Kik case? That one was pretty clear. They wrote out the KIN token and sold the KIN token based on growth or whatever. It was their social media platform. There was no other use of that KIN token except for investing in that company. And it was fairly clear, in their outcome how they did it, but it was weird how they orchestrated that outcome in the Kik case, because they still did not give any type of clarity as to the retail investor. Could they still sell the KIN token, although it was declared a security? And the court said nothing on that. Yet Kik was penalized by $5 million. It was a power grab, and it was a money grab. Still left people in a state of confusion. Why? Because there's no laws on the books to help clarify and dictate the outcome of a case with the right determination. HR 1628 seeks to amend the Securities Act and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, not change, not alter in a major way, but to create clarity, to have certain to also to give or to adjust the definitions so people understand then what a digital token is, and that it is not a security. And then they're directing the Securities Exchange Commission again to enact the regulatory changes. That is the directive coming from the bill to the SEC, giving them their direction, not enforcement mom, not Clayton, not Gensler, not any of them. They don't get to make the decision. They need guidelines. Right now, the SEC, they said, hey, you need to drive straight on the road. You have to make sure that every car that is on the road has to drive straight. The problem is there's no road. So the SEC comes out, tells you, you need to drive straight. Okay, I'm driving straight, but you're not allowed to drive straight in that direction. You need to drive straight in this direction. And then they're going to bring you to court. Oh, but you were driving straight. I'm driving straight. You're telling me I have to drive straight in that direction, but how do I know what direction I'm supposed to drive in if there's no road for me to drive on? And that's exactly what's happening. The SEC is has got this ridiculous authority to penalize people for not driving straight when there's no rules to what straight is. Nobody knows where straight is. So here you are, you're driving, and then you get pulled over by the SEC again, penalty, I'm bringing you to court. Why? Oh, I'm not driving straight again? Nope. Well, where is it? Where's the road? And so that's what's happening over here. So now we get into it again. They also want to adjust taxation of virtual currencies held in individual retirement accounts. They should not be taxed. You put into an IRA, you move the money around, they cannot be taxed for realized gain. To create a tax exemption for exchanges of one virtual currency to another. You're on Coinbase, you buy XRP, you decide you want to buy Bitcoin. By the way, there's a realized gain. But in this world, I can't spend either one of them. I might have a realized gain, but I still need to bring it back to the sovereign currency of the land that I live in. If I use my XRP to buy product, I go and buy a computer, I go buy a house, I go buy whatever, then it's a realized gain because I'm buying something with it. Cryptocurrency is both a currency and a vehicle of investment, or a vehicle of gain. Now, if you're moving from one to another, one currency to the next, I could say the same thing with the pound. I'm taking my dollar, the pound is more valuable. I'm putting my money in the pound. I feel more secure in the pound. Am I now going to be penalized because when I go and change my pound back to dollars, the valuation is higher now with the pound because it was $1.50, now it went up to $1.60. I made 10 cents on 10 cents on that transaction, on my dollars, on the money held. I put it back in dollars. The SEC comes, oh, you got to pay tax on that. It just doesn't make any sense. Now it's all on the same exchange. So here in this case, you have it on Coinbase. I'm going from XRP to Bitcoin. Now, if you're making $1 million, they're not saying, and if we get into it now, we're kind of running through time, so we're gonna have to jump through all of this quickly. We could dig into these later. But one of the things that the original Token Taxonomy Act set out to do was have a minimal amount of gain that isn't taxed. So in this case, if you're moving from one currency to the next, they called it $600. So if you had a $600 realized gain, you wouldn't be taxed on the first 600. Hey, it's something. If I move 10,000, I have $10,000 realized gain, on my Bitcoin or my XRP or whatever it is. Then in that case, you're going to be taxed at a certain point. But that was their starting point. Another part is they want to create a de minimis exemption from taxation for gains realized from the sale or exchange of virtual currency for other than cash. That's basically what they're saying, and for other purposes. But what is de minimis exemption? The de minimis tax rule, this is important to kind of understand. So under the de minimis tax rule, if a municipal bond, let's say you bought a bond, is purchased for a minimal discount, it's subject to capital gains tax rather than the usually higher ordinary income tax rate. So you're going to be taxed at a different rate, which is important. The cutoff for treatment as a capital gains is 1/4 point per full year between acquisition and maturity. The de minimis tax rule generally is relevant only in an environment of rising interest rates. So they're trying to apply a de minimis tax rule to the cryptocurrency. And as you go into it and you look it up, the de minimis tax rule sets the threshold at which a discount bond should be taxed as a capital gain rather than as ordinary income. The rule states that a discount that is less than 1/4 point per full year between its time of acquisition and its maturity is too small to be considered a market discount, blah, 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 blah. You can get into all that, but I like this, de minimis, about minimal things. So I like the idea that they want to, they're thinking. Warren Davidson put a lot of time and effort into trying to understand how they can impact the digital space. It's significant. This is, again, like I said, probably one of the most important legislations for blockchain, for crypto in the United States right now. And this is the third time it's been introduced, the third time it's gone in front of Maxine Waters at the Financial Services Committee, the very same person that doesn't know a Bitcoin from a Bitcoin, a BlackBerry from a dial-up rotary phone. It's so crazy. I mean, this stuff gets me fired up. Swear to God. So we don't want that one. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back. Let's go way back. Hang on. Where's the first one? Thought I brought them all up. Oh, this is it. Yeah. The 115th Congress, 2017-2018, HR 7356 was the first introduction of the Token Taxonomy Act that went to the Financial Services Committee in the Ways and Means Committee. December 20th, 2018 was when it was referred to committee. Let's look at the title. The official title. Look at this. As it was introduced, the short title, Token Taxonomy Act. You like it? Official title was introduced in 2017 to amend the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 to exclude digital tokens from the definition of a security, to direct the SEC to enact certain regulatory changes regarding digital units secured through public key cryptography. They've now simplified it. People understand that. They're getting a little better. To adjust taxation of virtual currencies held in individual retirement accounts, to create a tax exemption for exchanges of one virtual currency to another, to create a de minimis exemption from taxation for gains realized from the sale or exchange of virtual currency for cash, for other than cash, and for other purposes. Third time. This is the third time their title, as introduced, has not changed one bit. Co-sponsor. Number one co-sponsor for the first time around, Darren Soto. Now let's move forward. Now we go to the Digital Taxonomy Act, 2019. This one was a takeoff of the Token Taxonomy Act, changed it a little bit. This was introduced by Darren Soto in the 116th Congress, 2154. HR 2144 was the Token Taxonomy Act of 2019. We're going to go through both of those real quick. Let's look at the title. This was introduced by Warren Davidson, again, co-sponsors. Second time around. First time around, he had one co-sponsor, Warren Davidson. Second time around, Darren Soto. Josh Gottheimer, sound familiar? Ted Budd, sound familiar? Tulsi Gabbard. You have Scott Perry. You have John Rose, Eric Swalwell. Some of these names you'll be shocked to see on here. Anthony Gonzalez. All right, you had 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 Democrats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 additional Republicans. Bipartisan. They understood the significance of the Token Taxonomy Act in 2019 in the 116th Congress, and yet it still did not get out of the Financial Services Committee. Why? Because the person that runs the Financial Services Committee does not understand a Bitcoin from a Bitcoin or an iPhone from the old, rotary phones that you had to pick up the thing and you had to go click, 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 operator. It's insane. It's absolutely insane, right? The title. Let's look at this title real quick. The official title was introduced in the last Congress, second time around, to amend the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 to exclude digital tokens from the definition of a security to direct the Securities and Exchange Commission to enact certain regulatory changes regarding digital units secured through public key cryptography, to adjust taxation of virtual currencies held in individual retirement accounts, to create a tax exemption for exchanges of one virtual currency to another, to create a de minimis exemption from taxation for gains realized from the sale or exchange of virtual currency for other than cash and for other purposes. Sound familiar? Number two. That's number two. Now, what happened the second time around? Oh, look, it gets introduced to the House. Where are the other actions? That's it. That's it. Hang on. Oh, here. Let's go to all actions. Okay. Look at this. This is what happens to a bill when it dies. Goes to the House, right? The same day, gets introduced. This was April. Chip and I the other night said, hey, what time of year is it? Oh, yeah, it's March. It's time for the Token Taxonomy Act again. This time they're a month early. Introduced to the House, referred to the Committee of Financial Services and the Committee on Ways and Means for a period to be subsequently determined by the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. In each case, for consideration of such provisions as fall within the jurisdiction of the committee concerned, action by the House of Representatives. That's it. That's where a bill goes to die, when the Congress is too busy bumping into themselves and tripping over their own shoelaces to understand the significance of a critical bill that's put in front of them, and they do nothing. Right? Now, the April 9th, there was another bill. There were two bills introduced on the same day. The other was HR 2154 by Darren Soto. Sound familiar? That's right. He's the co-sponsor of the first. Who's his co-sponsor in HR 2154? Take a guess. Oh, look, Warren Davidson. These guys are brilliant. These guys, bipartisan. Soto's a Democrat. Davidson is a Republican, working to better the American people through clear regulation, or through clear law that will allow the SEC to make determination of outcome and to protect investors who are in this space, which is what should be happening. So the title of this one, the official title of HR 2154, which was the Digital Taxonomy Act, which worked in tandem with the Token Taxonomy Act to authorize additional appropriations to the FTC to prevent unfair or deceptive acts or practices relating to digital tokens and transactions relating to digital tokens, and to require a report to Congress on the Commission's actions as related. Now, here's a takeaway from all of this. The takeaway from all of this is that there's a couple elements within these bills. One element is that from a Republican perspective, they're looking for means to allow people to invest their money and make more money, and build on their wealth, to build businesses. That's from a Republican perspective. The other side with the Democrats, their main objective that we see perfectly clear within HR 2154 is to help and protect the individual investor, to help protect those that are building their business from deceptive acts, unfair practice as it relates. So they're working now the system. They're like, okay, let's take what's critical to Democrats, take what's critical to Republicans. Everybody wants to protect those investing, but that seems to be like the number one priority for the Democrats. They like to say it. They might not do it, but they like to say it. The Republican side, they like to say that they want to help and make freedom of business and blah, blah, blah. They might not do it 100%, but they like to say it. Put them both together, and you've got some outstanding legislation. Hence is why you need bipartisan bills that are put in front of Congress, and bipartisan act. It's just the only way. Now, check this out. Hang on. Before we part for the day, co-sponsors. Let's look at the co-sponsors real quick. Darren Soto, sounds familiar. Ted Budd, Josh Gottheimer and Scott Perry, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, plus Warren Davidson enact. This was dropped on March 8th, a month and a day early. Went to 2 committees. Guess which committees it went to? Let's see if you guys can guess. Oh, look, the Financial Services and the Ways and Means, where it's been twice before in front of the exact same people. Now is their time. Now is the moment. Now the spotlight is focused on Congress. You've got a court case that's being enacted by the SEC against a major player in the cryptocurrency space. And they're telling that major player that you need to drive straight, and there is no road. There's no acknowledgement of what straight means. And yet now they're trying to give it to the judge to make a decision, because the Congress for the past 4 years, 5 years has tripped over themselves, bumped into themselves, and focused on everything else except for the critical legislation that allows for economic growth and business growth in the United States that has a direct impact all over the world, and in specific on the crypto space. That's our hour. You guys are phenomenal. You guys know that we stream 6 days a week, Sunday through Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've got the roundtable at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow night. If you are brand new to On the Chain and you love what you hear, there's a big red button down below that says subscribe on it. Click the subscribe button, hit the bell notifier so you get notified every time we launch a free video, every time we put a live stream video. If you go into the description, go to otc.1/podcast, you'll find our podcast. If you go to, you can buy us coffee. There's a way to do that down there too. You can go to the website. Website is getting rebuilt, relaunched. There'll be a lot of great things coming. Tomorrow night, we're going to drop how you guys are going to register for our second sponsored On the Chain community virtual meetup that will take place when? March 28th. There you go. Professor X knows the date. March 28th, virtual live stream exclusively here on the chain. We'll check you guys out. When? Tomorrow night.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.